Bum-ba-da-dum. Howdy, y'all. Welcome to banjobenclark.com. Fun lesson for you today. I've got a banjo in my hand, but really this lesson is for you pickers that don't play banjo, or maybe you want to learn more about banjo, particularly in a jam setting. I've got a lesson called sight training. Now, you've maybe heard the term ear training, which is when we use our ears to tell what's going on musically. Well, we're going to learn how to use our eyes to tell what's going on musically. Let me tell you how I came up with this lesson idea. At a recent cabin camp, I had some campers tell me that they were intimidated and frustrated at jams that they were going to, and songs would be played that they didn't know. And they had a hard time finding out what key they were in or maybe what chords they were going to. And for whatever reason, they couldn't ask people. Maybe it was a noisy environment, or they didn't know people, or they were uncomfortable. And they just wanted to be able to look around and know more. And so what we're going to do today is learn how to look at a banjo and tell what's going on in a song. I've already done this for guitar and mandolin, so you want to check those out as well. Most of the time, we're going to look for guitar players because they've got the biggest cues, visual cues as to what's happening, but banjo players do as well. So what we're going to do today is talk about how to recognize what chords are being rolled over, and then we'll talk about chord shapes. We'll talk about some capo theory to tell how to discover what keys something in when a capo is being used. And then we're going to do a fun challenge where I'm going to play just a bit of either rolls or vamps, and I'm going to mute the audio and have you guess which key I'm in. And then we'll bring the audio back in and I'll tell you and see if you get it right, okay? If you're watching somewhere else besides banjobenclark.com, I'd be honored to have you on board as a Gold Pick member. I have over 800 lessons for all kinds of instruments, so go check that out. You can have access to that today. Let's get started. You know, people often make fun of bluegrass, or especially banjo players, and they say, let me guess, you want to play a song in the key of G. And it's true. I mean, I'm not going to deny that claim. We have so much that we do in the key of G. And if not in the key of G, then at least out of the G position. What do I mean by that? I mean playing like we're in the key of G, but if we have to play in a key that's higher than G, I just use my capo, bring it up, and I still play out of the G position. So it's safe to say when you step into a jam and you're looking at a banjo player for cues, maybe you're the only guitar player and you're trying to back them up. If they're playing without a capo and they're rolling down the neck, it's probably going to be in G. Now, it can be in C and it can be in D. Those are the other two keys, pretty much, unless you're Alan Mundy, that you're going to be playing open without a capo. But G is pretty much going to be it. And so we want to learn what to look for there. And also, then we'll move on to capos and stuff like that. It's important to know, if you don't know, that a banjo is most of the time tuned to an open G chord. So all of those open strings, G, D, G, B, D, are notes in a G major triad. That's pretty cool for us banjo players, because that means that if I just do rolls with open strings, I'm playing over a G chord. So lesson number one, if you see a banjo player that's just kind of rolling along and maybe just doing something every once in a while with his left hand, like we're playing over a G chord. Now, are we in the key of G? Probably, but we don't really know, because it could be that we're playing in another key that uses the G chord. So how do we tell if we're in the key of G? Well, there's a couple different hacks. The most important one, the most common one, is whatever chord that the song ends on, like the chorus ends on, that's probably the key that we're in. Almost every song comes back to its tonic chord, the key that it's in at the end of the chorus. So that's, if you want to just listen through once, you get to the end of the chorus and they come back to that chord, you find that that's the key that we're in. Now, if we're in the key of G, assuming that, then there are just some other basic chords that we're probably going to go to in bluegrass. There's not tons of variety. I think that's a great thing. But we're going to go primarily to a C and a D chord, and our minor chords will be an E minor or an A minor. And we are often going to go to an F chord, maybe an A chord too. But pretty much G, C, and D, and E minor are our main four. Now, what can make it difficult to follow on a banjo versus a guitar is, and we talk about in the guitar lesson how this can be a challenge there too, but banjo players don't have to make the full chord shape to go to a chord. It's very common that a banjo player go to a partial chord shape. Okay, just grabbing whatever strings that he or she wants to play. But let me just show you what a C chord looks like. It looks like this. Very often a banjo player will leave off the middle finger and they'll just do something like this. And sometimes they'll just play one finger, but that's less common. So a lot of times like this. And when it comes to a D chord, they're hardly ever going to make a full old D chord to roll over anyway. A lot of times they're just going to have one finger down, which can be confused for a G chord, and that's okay. But you'll be able to hear it with what the bass is doing. Or they might be playing the second fret in the middle. Or something like this. That would be D. So going through G, C, and D might look something like this. So I just went through 1, 4, and 5. And once you get used to, get a little practice looking at a banjo player's rolling when they're playing in that open G, you'll get to where you can start to pick out those chords. One that's very important that you're going to see a lot is that E minor. That's the relative minor in the key of G. And it's pretty easy to pick out because it looks just like this. You'll see that a lot of times. Okay. And again, that A minor kind of looks like a C, just like on a guitar, but a little different. The A chord, when we go to the 2 chord, most often they're going to bar or play the top 2 strings. And that most often comes before a D chord, and you'll get to where you start to pick up those patterns. Now there's one more chord that's really common when we're playing in the key of G, and that's the F chord. And it's going to look a little different than all the others. It's primarily going to be played like that. A lot of times when we play the F chord, we're going to play pretty much a full chord, maybe leave off a couple. We might play this version if we're just playing those top strings. But when it looks, what's handy about it looks like a guitar F chord, doesn't it? But we've got our pinky down here. So F chord. All right. So that's the key of G. When we're thinking about the other 2 keys that banjo players roll in, it's primarily going to be without a capo. It's going to be C or D. So how do we tell the difference between those and G? Again, which one of those chords do they keep coming back to at the end of the choruses, and which one do they end the progression on? And if it keeps coming back to a C chord, it's probably a key of C. If it comes back to a D chord, probably a key of D. And both of those keys, along with G, use a lot of the same chords. So it can be a little tough to just tell just by looking. I'll challenge you later. But again, we get our cue from whatever chord they come back to. Okay, I want to talk to you in the next little video segment about what our rhythm chords look like on the banjo, the primary ones, and then we'll also then talk about capos and then do the challenge. Let's talk about our 2 major chord positions that we're going to use on the banjo up the neck. We've already kind of learned one. That's with the F there. And that closed shape is going to be taken all over the banjo. So you're going to see stuff like this. Okay? And you're going to wonder, well, what are they doing? Well, it's important for us to see which position it is. There's that F position. Same position that we had there. I'm just going to play it up here where it's easier for you to look at. And with this particular shape, when these 3 fingers are in a line here, the root of the chord is going to be played by the pinky and the ring. So those notes right there are a D note on the 12th fret, and that's a D chord. The other major position that we're going to see, and it takes a little while to be able to recognize the difference, is just when you switch the first 2 fingers. Watch this. All we're doing is switching them back to the F chord, and then we're going to go to what we call the D shape. Okay, F shape, D shape. And when that position happens, whatever note the middle finger is on is the root of that chord. So let's bring it back down. Let's bring it to right here. There's that D shape. The middle finger is on the root. And what note is that? It's a G note. So this is a G chord. Okay? So let's listen to the two major chord shapes, both playing a G chord. If we go back to the F shape and we put our ring finger and pinky on a G note, there's a G chord. And then if we raise it up, switch our shape to a D shape and put our middle finger on a G note, there's another G chord. So you hear the same chord, different inversions. And that's what you're going to see banjo players doing a lot. They're going to go back and forth between this G and the D shape. And so sometimes they're going to hang in one or the other. And if they're hanging there and you're wondering, oh, goodness, what chord is that? Because it could be one of two. Then you just need to try to remember that if the fingers are all in a line, then that ring finger is on the root. And so then you can kind of do the math, if you want, of where that finger is. If the fingers are crossed like that, then it's the middle finger that's on the root. Okay? Cool. Now, as far as minor shapes go, there's just a couple different minor shapes. The one that we're going to see most often is this one, which is the A minor shape, just moved up the neck. And that's used a lot of times over E minor right here. And for that one, the middle finger is going to be over the root. So there's an E minor chord. Here's a C note, C minor chord, D minor chord, C minor, where's a G? There's a G minor chord, okay? So our other major shapes or minor shapes, you might see stuff like this. And that's just your E minor brought up capo. Okay? With that position, just so you know, the pinky and the ring finger cover the root of that minor chord. Okay, so important just to be aware that there's two major chord shapes and how to know which one the root is under, and then you can figure out what chord they're playing. Or you could just say, hey, banjo player, what chord are you playing? And maybe they know, and maybe they don't. That's the thing. Let's talk about capos real quick.